Thank you all for being here. I want to applaud you for late in the afternoon being here, and a lot of you probably came in on planes this morning and bleary-eyed, and so thanks. And if you fall asleep, just have a nice nap. I hope you enjoy your little bit of sleep. This is such a great place to have this discussion, to do this in Armenia, first Christian nation. Out my hotel window, I can see Mount Ararat, where in the Jewish theology, Noah's Ark lands and the human project is relaunched from here. These sites are just things in my childhood that I only dreamed of and just were such incredible places that I just could never imagine being. And then to actually be in a place like this is just to me profound. But then also at the same time recognize this is a place where a genocide happened, the 1915 Armenian genocide that was just so horrific. And so this is a great discussion to have here in this place. And for Armenia to host the Year of On Dialogue and doing this, I think it's a wonderful thing for us to do and to contemplate and hopefully start to make some progress moving on forward. The Armenian genocide just really makes the point that genocides mostly happen to religious minorities. That's the unfortunate nature of them, but you can look the Jewish Holocaust in World War II, that Hitler even cited the Armenian genocide before. He says, well, look, nobody cared about the Armenians. What are they going to care about the Jews? And that should really tell us something right there. If you don't care about this, you're going to get a lot more of it. It really should tell us something, just that casual of a phrase. We can look to more recently the Yazidis and Christians in northern Iraq and the genocide there in 2014. Again, religious minorities, small, peaceful religious communities. They weren't trying to hurt anybody. They just wanted to practice their faith. And they get genocide. Or the Uyghur Muslims in China, even now in 2021. And I've been interviewing some Uyghur women who have gone through horrific things and the deaths. You all know what religious freedom is, or maybe you don't, and it might be good just to read real quickly what it is. It's Article 18 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights, 1948 agreement. It's a paragraph. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in community with others and in public or private to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observation. That's it. That's the 1948 agreement. That's religious freedom. It is, in my estimation, and I've been around at this for quite some period of time, the hardest human right to get right. It is the most difficult. And at the same time, I think it's the most important. I think it's the centerpiece, the cornerstone of human rights, because if you get this one right, you can build the others on top of it. You can build freedom of assembly. You can build freedom of speech and press and other items if you can get this one right. This one's also the easiest one to manipulate by enterprising politicians. I remember, and this is just, I'm just giving you a reaction, and I'm not proud of it, but I remember seeing the first mosque go up in Wichita, Kansas. And when I drove by it, and I was going, I follow Jesus. What's this doing here? I can't build a church in Saudi Arabia. Why do these guys get to build a mosque here? I mean, and I start just kind of getting fired up. And I thought, well, wait a minute. We believe in freedom of religion. They're peaceful. They're peacefully practicing their faith. They're entitled to do this. But that's the very point. If you're an enterprising politician or leader, here's one that you can hit. And if you can hit that emotional note, you can move people. And you can get them to do crazy things. You can get them to act wild. You can get them to kill people. We're seeing the highest levels of religious persecution we've ever seen. We're seeing the highest levels of Christian persecution we've seen in the history of Christendom right now, in the world today. And if we don't, and I want to make this as really the centerpiece comment, if we don't get religious freedom for everybody, everywhere, all the time, and governments ensuring that, that's the standard, religious freedom for everybody, everywhere, all the time. Governments ensuring that. If we don't get that, we will see the clash of civilizations that Huntington wrote about. And indeed, that's what we're seeing today. You're seeing the clash of civilizations. You see it a lot in Africa right now, in the Sahel region. You're seeing really militant Islam and Christianity across the Middle Belt. We're seeing it in lots of different conflict places, and you're going to get a lot more of it unless we can get governments around the world to say, okay, the dominant religion in our country is Buddhism or Hinduism or Christianity or Judaism or Islam, but we're going to guarantee everybody here has the right to practice freedom of religion peacefully, period, end of story. That's our job. And if we don't get to that, you're going to see these conflicts escalate and continue and grow. So what do? I think, number one, we've got to acknowledge the problem. This is a problem, and much of the time the world's just kind of looked past this one saying, you know, religion, we don't really care about it that much. We're going to just deal with reason. You've got to deal with religion. 80% of the world's population moves daily by what they believe in their heart. This is what moves them. You got to start dealing with them. My estimation, part of the success of the Abrahamic Accords is its name. Abraham. It acknowledges the religious piece of it. We've got to acknowledge that this is a vital part of what we are. I think we need to relaunch the Global Human Rights Project. We've been in decline in human rights for 20 years around the world. We need to get back to that core agreement, the 1948 agreement. This is what human rights is in the world today. No more, no less. And religious freedom is a centerpiece of this. We need to acknowledge that centrality of religious freedom. And it only works if everybody gets religious freedom everywhere, all the time. It has to be this total picture of it, or it doesn't work. You can't say, well, we'll have religious freedom for the Christians here in this country, but not anybody else. Or for the Muslims, they can have it here, but nobody else gets it. And the rest of the world, we're going to force you all to do religious freedom. It's got to be everybody everywhere. It only works if it all holds together. I think we've got to start making it a part of our security negotiations. This is such a central issue to peace and violence in the world that we need to bring it into NATO, for instance, on the part of the United States, that this is part of what being a part of NATO is about, is that you guarantee religious freedom, that you stand for it, that you don't export it, religious persecution. And I think our peace treaties, we need to have, and I'll finish on this point, we need to have a peace treaty between top theologians of all the faiths. Peace treaty that says our theology does not support killing of somebody of the other faith just because they are of a different faith. Very simple. To keep the enterprising politicians or other people from saying, we're just going to use this as to point differences out and say, no, if the top theological leaders would say, our theology does not support the killing of somebody of another faith just because they're of the other faith. It could be a two-sentence treaty, but we've got to push it then around the world so that religion doesn't get manipulated as it can so easily to pursue and hurt other people. You've got an excellent panel here, Mark. I look forward to the discussion. God bless you for being here.
My name is Mark Vlasic. I split time between teaching at Georgetown, practicing law, and being a TV producer in Hollywood. And in my Hollywood world, I actually helped create a TV series that has a Catholic priest as a positive character. And I say that because I think it's tragic how often you see in Hollywood and other places in entertainment where the priest, the faith character, is the most challenged character. And so I could not be more thrilled and more honored to be invited here to Yerevan to help lead this discussion. And particularly, as Ambassador Brownback said, at the First Christian Kingdom. I think the depth of history and the understanding of interfaith relations goes incredibly deep here. I started my career after Gibson Dunn, as one of our colleagues here on the panel, working as the youngest prosecutor at the UN War Crimes Tribunal in The Hague. And so I saw firsthand the most terrible side of humanity, the lack of humanity, by working on a very large genocide trial. And that has really galvanized my personal kind of life, separate from a lot of my professional work, to really focus on this interfaith aspect. And so I, again, want to compliment the government here for hosting us all today. What I thought I'd do is just ask our panelists to just briefly introduce themselves, but dive in a little bit to how your work and how your journey has intersected on this aspect of faith and freedom. So, Your Excellency, Mr. Minister, please start with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I welcome all of you to this important Yerevan dialogue. This is very important platform, and it's my honor to be here and to speak among these kind of distinguished speakers. So I'm the Minister of Labor and the Social Affairs of Armenia, and if I answer to your question, how I first engaged or related to the faith and the religion. So I must begin by emphasizing like the Christianity is an inseparable part of our national narrative, which formed the foundational pillar of our national identity. So on a personal level, when to answer your question personally, from my personal experience, how I related to faith and the religion. So Ambassador Brownback's speech reminded me my family story when I, after graduating the school, I was torn between to decide between medicine and humanities, and I decided to continue my higher education in humanities and go to the Faculty of History in order to learn ancient Armenian, to read the ancient Gospels that my family inherited, my ancestors inherited. And when reading these books, so you know that every manuscript, every ancient Gospel has colophon, like a text in the end, which speaks about the story of the book, how it is written, how it preserved, etc. Almost all of the ancient manuscripts, Gospels or Bible, so it's about the history of the persecution of Christians and the moments when the Christianity was in a different and difficult condition during different periods of Armenian history. And it's important that these books saved not by chance, but by the will of people who combined by faith, and this faith of Armenians became very important source of social cohesion. So this journey had profound influence on my public activity. And later on, when I became the Minister of the Labor and the Social Affairs of Armenia, so it's always reminded me that all the policies should be based on on the values which will propagate, let's say, equality, and that religious freedom as a value which creates the social cohesion. So it's not for me the freedom of belief. It's not like the legal right, but it's like foundation for the social cohesion. And from the professional activity, I can say that no policy can succeed if there is no like a solid pillar of the social cohesion, of the social coexistence. And especially after war, so our ministry was the main state agency one of the main state agencies, like mainly to deal with the post-war consequences, to provide different kind of the social projects in order to overcome the differences, to overcome the challenges. And the social cohesion and the social responsibility towards the others was the most important thing, like to strengthen the social bonds. And I can say that it couldn't happen without continuous dialogue, empathy, and of course the courage to learn and to listen to each other. So this is how my Christian identity, national identity, and personal experience shaped our public activity, and my personal public activity, to focus on policies in your professional life which will create cohesion. And one of the foundational pillars is fight and the sense of faith and the sense of freedom of religion, because when you look at these stories, you understand that if there was freedom of religion, if there was freedom of faith, no persecution could happen.
Thank you, Excellency. That was beautiful. Monsignor?
Do you want a long version or short version? Long version, it is about an hour.
we have 30 minutes left, so.
Okay, so I will give the short one. Thank you. I'm from Poland. I became priest in 1996, and since the first day I was working on religion. And of course, this is part of my vocation to work in the issues related to religion. And since the first, my mission was in the parish in Poland. We had in parish not only Catholics but also the believers of other religions. Some Orthodox old Russians. We had also Greek Catholics and some Muslims. So this was the first experience of working with others, cooperating with them. After that, I was sent to Rome, and after studies, I entered in the diplomatic service of the Holy See, and went for the mission in Senegal. And it was amazing experience because from my own experience living in the almost 90% of Catholics. Poland, I went to Senegal where the Muslims were more than 90% and Catholics just maybe 5%. But it was amazing experience of seeing how two religions can live together. Because there was a long-standing tradition of tolerance between the religions there. They were growing up together, childs playing on the same playground, Muslims and Christians. They would invite for the neighbors for the religious feast as well to participate. Amazing experience, really, and I really enjoyed it. And I tried to remember this when I was after moved to Vienna, where I was appointed to our permanent mission to the international organization, especially to the OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which is not only on hard security, but mostly was also focusing on human rights, rule of law, tolerance, non-discrimination, elections, etc. And for us, we are working all the time also in the issue, in most part of our time, in the issue of human rights, especially on freedom of religion. And we are trying to promote it. So from the experience in the Catholic Poland, to experience in the Muslim country like Senegal, to the work in favor of freedom of religion at the multilateral organization level, which is also quite important, I think, because this is the place where we advocate to change the policies, to promote the freedom of religions in the single countries. I worked after that for a short period of time in Poland, and I moved to Vatican, where now I'm Undersecretary for Relations with States, and so for bilateral relations. And I can confess to you here that almost in all our meetings we will raise the issue of religion in the country. It's sometimes it's the question of ensuring fixing some small issues if it's Catholic countries with no problem or not problems, but sometimes it's also negotiating important issue for the Catholic minority, and sometimes it's also in promoting the freedom of religion in general for everybody. Because at the end, we as the Holy See diplomacy, we are not looking for the privileges for us, but for religious freedom for everybody. And I wish that this would become reality everywhere. Thank you.
Dziękuję. Mr. Secretary.
You've missed a few preamble words in that title. I've been told it's Deputy Assistant Secretary, Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, Department of State. It's a long title. And in Washington, D.C., the longer your title, the less important you are. So you can do the math. We also have Ambassador Brownback here, very short title. Senator Brownback, very short title. So you can know who's most important here. So thank you, Senator Brownback and Ambassador Brownback, for sharing this stage with us, with me in particular. I came to the issues of religious freedom very organically, like many of my esteemed panelists, in that I am a Christian. I'm a person of faith, and I grew up in a Christian household in Florida. And I remember as a young whippersnapper, even in kindergarten, growing up in the 80s, I was a Reagan baby, as they say, going to a private Christian school kindergarten and hearing about my fellow Christians who were being persecuted around the world, particularly in this very far-off place called the Soviet Union, and how difficult it was for Christians to have access to the Bible in those days and have access to the Bible in their own language and to practice their own religion in their own form of Christianity, whatever it looks like, including here in Armenia. And so I learned very quickly as a young Christian to care about my fellow Christians. And Jesus, when he was asked what are the two greatest commands, you probably know, he said that the two greatest commands are love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and the second, love your neighbor as yourself. And it's impossible to love your neighbor as yourself if you don't care about your neighbor's freedom and his ability to practice his religion freely. Because as I love to say, compelled religion is not religion, right? You cannot force someone to believe, no matter how hard these crafty politicians and government actors may try. You cannot change a person's heart on the outside. It takes a change of heart from within. And so I cared about that issue as a Christian. I cared about my fellow brother and sister around the world as Christians, but I also cared about people who wanted to practice their own religions, whether Islam or Judaism or Hinduism or Buddhism or non-belief, whatever their heart and conscience dictated within the confines of their relationship with God as they saw it. And as Ambassador Brownback said, we saw firsthand today, I had the opportunity to go and see the Tzitza Nakaberd Memorial and what it looks like when human rights breaks down in its worst extent. And it was a very moving experience. So fast forward 20-something years later from when I was a young kindergartner there in Orlando, Florida, I had the opportunity to work in a refugee camp sponsored by the UN in Jordan with Syrian refugees. And again, saw firsthand what it looks like when a government actor, a state-sponsored regime action, tramples on human rights. And the people only take it so long until eventually it boils over. And then if a government continues to trample on those rights, you see the gravest human rights abuses that we've seen in the 21st century in Syria and other places. So seeing that firsthand, working in a refugee camp, then spurred me on to go to law school, where I wanted to have an impact on not just individuals, but on policy, particularly American policy. And after a few years as a sojourner in what they call big law at a great firm in Washington, D.C., which my esteemed panelist Mark also worked at, working on sanctions from the U.S. government, along with DOJ investigations and other investigations, had the opportunity to come join this administration in what I see as one of our number one priorities across the American government, which is religious freedom. President Trump issued one of his very first executive orders in April highlighting religious liberty. I think he said, exact quote, "We want to further the cause of religious liberty around the world." So I know that is one of President Trump's priorities. It is one of Vice President Vance's priorities. He spoke about both personally as a practicing Catholic. He had the opportunity to attend the new commencement of our favorite Pope, Pope Leo, the American Pope, at a fellow Chicagoan. I guess I sojourned there long enough to say I was, spent time in Chicago like Pope Leo. And Secretary Rubio as well, as a practicing Christian. So from the very top levels of American government down to the very low levels of American government with Jacob McGee, it's a priority of our administration, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And I'm not just from a personal perspective, but from a broad policy perspective, ensuring that every religion, everywhere, to borrow Ambassador Brownback's phrase, has the opportunity to practice the religion that they see fit. So happy to be here with you all, and I commend our hosts for an incredible welcome and an excellent forum to discuss these important issues.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. That was fantastic. On the topic of Chicago, I have to hasten to add that I was born in Southside Chicago, just like the Holy Father, and we have an incredible guest from Chicago as well. So, Oscar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark, and it's a privilege to be here. I wear a number of hats. One hat is an advocacy hat in Washington, D.C., representing Armenian interests. Another one is representing Armenia in my city of Chicago. And finally, it's having served our church, our diocese, for 30 years, which is democratically elected. So that's something to be proud of and make note of. But I never really experienced in the United States the lack of religious freedom. Like, we took it for granted. We didn't realize, right, just growing up. And we had other challenges, though, and for most of us, our formation as Armenians in the diaspora was through the churches, through our faith. And the Polish community is organized the same way in Chicago. So that was a source of our development, growing into leadership over time, and then ultimately into activism. And activism based in our faith, based on our values, based in our morals. And that could be local, state, and ultimately with the senator and national level. And you can't help but bring your faith and formation experiences to our community work. So one issue that I personally live through sometimes is understanding this church and state, right? This separation. But I came to realize I see church and state as maybe a fence, like you can see through that fence, church and state, and work together. That's the way I see it. I don't see it as a wall. I don't think that was the intention of it, is to look and collaborate together. And Mark, you mentioned Chicago. I want to be able to mention Washington for a second. And my favorite museum in the world is the Museum of the Bible, which I visited. I encourage everyone to visit it. And I think that's a great opportunity for all of us to work together, because it goes, back to the source of everything. So, yeah, we Armenians are deep people of faith, and we're just navigating onto the future working together. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Oscar. I think cultural heritage is important to all our respective churches and religions. And a few years ago, thanks to the invitation of the Prime Minister, I was able to come visit Armenia and start a project to do an initial exhibit at the Museum of the Bible on Armenian cultural heritage that we hope is to expand that. But recently, thanks to some of the wonderful colleagues here and folks in the Vatican, I had the chance to attend the inauguration and enthronement of Pope Leo. I was really struck by His Holiness and his remarks, both at the opening inauguration mass and also in his remarks to the ecumenical and interfaith leaders, how His Holiness spoke about the importance of ecumenical dialogue, interreligious dialogue, and human fraternity, which is a term, of course, which was used by Pope Francis as well, particularly in the document of human fraternity that was signed in Abu Dhabi. I'd love to hear any thoughts or suggestions or insights that any of you would like to do quite quickly, because we have 15 minutes left, on the importance of celebrating our collective cultural heritage, whether it be Christian heritage or other heritage, to understand how we all live together as part of our human family. Your Excellency.
Thank you, Mark. So before going to the answer to your question, so I know about your engagement with the project of like Armenian exhibition in the Museum of Bible, and I see that there is a huge potential to do more, and we hope that in future we can continue our cooperation on this project. And in general, we have a lot of potential to cooperate with the United States of America on the religious freedom, and we appreciate the Trump administration's support and support in promoting religious freedom and in supporting the persecuted Christians. So what is cultural heritage? This is very important, first of all, for the, again, social unity, because cultural heritage is something which brings people together and which makes people to respect each other. So Armenia, being 99% Christian population, having Christian population, we respect the cultural heritage of others. So you can see acting mosque, ancient mosque in the downtown of Yerevan, and even the 14th century religious archaeological sites like close Yerevan. And this shows that we have respect to others, we have respect to the cultural heritage of others, which we consider our cultural heritage. So this is very important to have the cultural respect on the cultural heritage, which is especially its ethnographic component. You all know that the Armenian government has a dedicated division for ethnic minorities and religious affairs under the Prime Minister's office, which tasked with coordinating policy on religion and ethnic issues. And in 2021, our parliament, maybe you know that, approved the National Minority Day as a public holiday, celebrating Armenia's ethnic and religious diversity. And this is also very important precondition for the social justice. And what is social justice? We recognize this is very important for our government's commitment, and we joined ILO's General Directors International, the global coalition of the social justice. And for social justice is not about equality, it's about the equal access to all services, irrespective to race, religion, and other differences. And we inaugurated international conference on the social justice, and this year's topic, very surprisingly, is about social justice by or with the help of the human fraternity. So the human fraternity will be the main topic of this year's the social justice conference, because we see that human fraternity is very important precondition for having social justice in society. And if you have a social justice society, you can create public good for everyone, irrespective of race, religion, and other differences.
Thank you so much. Monsignor?
Mark already explained you how the Catholic Church is engaged in ecumenical dialogue, in interreligious dialogue, so I don't have to answer it because he answered for me already. No, joking apart, thank you, Mark, for the remarks on Pope Francis and Pope Leo statements on this important issue. Before starting, I would maybe make some general remarks on the issue of protection of religious sites, because what we are noting today is that there is increasing number of attacks on synagogues, on mosques, on churches, on the other places of worship, cemeteries, and other religious sites, and this is really alarming. And most of these attacks, this violence, is with anti-religious prejudice. It is hitting the properties, not always the persons, but still it is important to reaffirm that the protection of the place of worship is a direct consequence of the defense of the freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, and it's a legal obligation for the authorities, state authorities, to protect it. If it is independent of the political party belongings or religious affiliation. So this is, I think it's important to have it in mind. And when we are talking about the protection of the religious heritage, I think we have to start from the highest level. I mean, international level, multilateral level. So we have international organizations to work on this. UNESCO is the first one. I mentioned the OSCE, which where I worked for, but the UN also, they have the vocation, they have to work on this issue. Then we have what I already stated, the importance of the action from the governments. So they have to protect these places as well. This is the legal obligation, as I said. But after all, I think we have to also talk about the human level, the single person, which have to have respect for the other. And here we already flagged up the issue of the human fraternity. We are all brothers, each other, and we have to respect each other's convictions, but also the heritage that everybody has produced as a fruit of his own religious convictions. And we own to this, to the other, like our brothers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary?
So if you visit Washington, D.C., you can visit the amazing Museum of the Bible I've been to, and it's a fantastic exhibit with history spanning millennia, really. It's incredible. But if you also come to D.C., you can go to my favorite monument or memorial, which is the city full of memorials, as you know, if you visited, which is the Lincoln Memorial. And sometimes you go just at just the right time at night, you can catch the Lincoln Memorial when not many other people are there. I encourage you to go and to read the speeches on either side of the Lincoln Memorial as you walk in and you see President Lincoln, our 16th president during the Civil War. And on the left is his very famous Gettysburg Address. And you read the words, 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. All men are created equal. There in the very first sentence of his most important address is the idea that there is a divine being, God, who gave all citizens equal rights. We are all created equal. And you turn to the right, his little known, but I think more impressive work, one of the best compositions in English literature, I think, and all of English language, is his second inaugural address on the eve of the end of our destructive Civil War. And you cannot read that speech without seeing the numerous references to God, to Scripture, to the importance of divine justice. And so to envision an America where you erase religious language is really to erase American history. And to envision America where you erase religious freedom is really to erase the idea of America. I mean, America was founded on the idea of religious freedom, and religious freedom for all. And I think one of the most overlooked atrocities and really a crime against humanity of the 21st century is the destruction of such important religious markers like the Taliban, who destroyed the Buddhist statues in the early 21st century, and then ISIS in Syria, destroying religious heritage sites of many religions in Syria. And so preserving these sites for future generations so that we can educate people on what it means to have a diverse, religiously free society, which I am proud to come from a country which I think promotes and respects religious freedom for all, not just Christians, but to save those historical sites so that other generations can see the important tradition that we all have inherited as humans of these important sites that sadly are now gone. So preserving them now in our lifetimes, to your point, to your question, Mark, I think is an important priority because otherwise they could be gone someday.
Thank you so much, Oscar.
Thank you. Briefly, I was moved by the senator's comment and report that 80% of the population are moved by their faith. 80% of the population, and this interfaith dialogue, interreligious dialogue that many of our churches are engaged in is critical because, on the most basic level, Jacob said, we're at the human level, one another, and we don't say that it's my God or your God, we say is God. So what's the issue here? Why do we need to be so disconnected? So I think this interfaith process will bring us together in a better way.
Thank you so much, Oscar. I have a bunch of questions, but I've just been informed that I need to ask you guys questions too. So please assume that my questions are brilliant, but yours are even better. So if we have a couple questions from the audience, we'll take 2 questions, just 2. We'll give it the last words to the audience, or to our panel, and I will ask the minister if you can describe a bit more about Armenia's social protection system and advancing human fraternity. That's an extra one, but let me do the right in the front and right in the back.
Thank you. My name is Ed Kessler. I'm president of the Wolf Institute in Cambridge, UK, and we look at relations across the 3 faiths. Ambassador, you and I met before with Fiona Bruce, and one of the things that hasn't been said here, so I put it as a question to you all, but particularly you, Ambassador, is I wonder whether the problem is less about bringing religious leaders, top leaders together to say we believe in peace. So I'm sure if you bring Pope Leo with the Grand Mufti of Al-Azhar, with the Chief Rabbi, they're all going to agree. The issue is the radicalism within our communities. The issue is the extremism that exists within my own community, I'm Jewish, the extremism which exists amongst your community, amongst some Christian supremacists, and the extremism that exists amongst radical jihadi Islamists. And surely we need to tackle that to get to a point where we will have true freedom of religion and belief for all of us.
Thank you so much. Let's take the question in the back, and then we'll give everyone a last word here on the panel. Right in the back. Gentleman with the glasses.
Thank you very much. Well, my name is Lawrence Taveras. I'm from Dominican Republic. This is my first time here in Armenia, and it's such a wonderful opportunity to be here. And my question goes for all the panel. I remember that my whole family is Catholic, and one of their favorite saints is San Jose Maria Escrivá de Balaguer, and he always focused very much on freedom. And one of his quotes was that freedom is the most noble possession that God has given to men. And in light of this, my question goes also with the fellow here that made a question on the rise of authoritarianism. And in countries such as mine in the Dominican Republic, we see autocracies going up famous in Central America and also in South America. And in light of this, how can the Holy See actively protect and promote the gift of religious freedom in an age that is marked by rising authoritarianism, ideological polarization, and the subtle erosion of the conscience rights, even in democratic societies such as this one? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Gracias. If we can just go down the panel for a minute or two of your last final thoughts, then we'll conclude. Ambassador Brownback, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks for the question here. My point is really that we need to fight theology with theology. In the Western world in particular, we're too used to, okay, we'll fight your theological argument with reason. But it doesn't work. Because you're fighting on a different plane. The one guy's shooting for the heart, the other guy's shooting for the head, and the heart's what moves people. And that's why I think it would be important if we had top theologians go into countries even where you've got these sort of things coming out and just say, our theology does not support what's happening here. And that's my sense of it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Mark. So I will start from your first question regarding the social protection system and its role on having the human fraternity. So to be short, I would say the social protection system of Armenia is about safeguarding individuals' dignity and prevent marginalization. So to provide full access on the fair services for all members of society. And this is, I think, the important precondition, and it's very important, especially during the time of the crisis which we are experiencing during the last years. And I can say that we could manage to adequately respond to all of these challenges of the crisis because of compassionate response to all of these problems. And if there is, let's say, the commitment to human fraternity, to treating all people not as categories but as a unity. So I think this is the precondition for having the human fraternity, which is an important component of our social protection system. And I will say that so compassion we consider very important, like the component which leads to human fraternity. But this compassion is possible only if there is consensus among individuals, government, and civil society. So this is the secret of the success of let's say the social cohesion during very different period of time that we have been experiencing last years.
Thank you so much, Monsignor.
Thank you. I think it was mentioned here that probably getting together just 2-3 of top world leaders, they will agree on the basic principles of the peaceful coexistence of all religions. It's not enough. And I agree with you that we have to work more. And we have to, I think, work to have more leaders joining this kind of approach to the relation between the religions and trying to work to have it more and more, and after, from the top level, to do the same job at the middle level and to go to local communities as well and to work in this issue. More people engage in this dialogue, in these meetings we will have, the better we will tackle the issue of the extremism in our communities that sometimes is growing. So we have to be positive on this. And yes, sometimes we are tempted to focus on the extreme events, etc. But I think there is a lot of people working in the positive direction in this field, and we have to encourage them. We will do it definitely. For the other question, the Holy See is really engaged, trying to do it at the all level, from the international organizations, relations with single states, as well as the work with the local communities and encouraging also the priests, the local leaders to meet with the other religious leaders and to work for respect for respect to each other. Thank you.
Dziękuję. Mr. Secretary?
I appreciated Ambassador Brownback's idea of getting back to the basics, in particular the 1948 Declaration. I think is a great idea. Instead of trying to muddy the water with all sorts of other human rights that we may or may not disagree with based on your particular culture or worldview or religion, getting back to those very core basics of what it means to have human dignity and what we've all agreed on already in 1948, and coming back to the basics. For us as Americans, that means going back to the basic Bill of Rights, to our Constitution. There's a reason why freedom of religion is mentioned first in our First Amendment, because it's one of the hardest ones to get right, as Ambassador Brownback also noted. And so going back to those core ideas of religious freedom, which is core to what it means to be an American, but also core to what it means to be a human. Going back to those fundamental principles that we have enshrined in our Constitution, but it also enshrined in UN documents from 1948. So going back to the basics, and if we agree on 80% of human rights, of what they mean as human rights, then let's work on those 80% together, and let the 20% be a discussion for another day. But coming back to the basics of what it means to have human dignity enshrined in our laws and in our practice and in the enforcement of those laws is a priority of this administration, I know. So thank you all for being here and for your welcome so far.
Thank you so much. Oscar, the last word is with you.
Thank you. My comment includes a request, and that request is that we raise the visibility and attention on the protection of the religious sites, particularly the Armenian quarter of Jerusalem, which is at grave risk. And Armenians have been there for a millennium, and we're at risk in pressure from all sides that valuable place can be lost, important religious sites. And if the Vatican, the Holy See, I know they're paying attention to it, and the State Department, everybody here, because it could be a domino effect. I mean, the loss of Christians in the Middle East is of grave concern. So maybe the Armenians first, but we don't know what's next. So we ask your prayers in that context.
Oscar. Let me just say on behalf of all the international guests here, we are incredibly grateful to be here. I think having this conversation at this time is incredibly important. And so I want to thank our hosts for having us. I want to thank all you for being here. And please join me in thanking our incredibly wonderful, thoughtful, and worldly panel. Thank you so much.